G'day guys, welcome back to Cakes by Chopper. Today we have Frankenstein for you as part of the Halloween series. What you're going to do is head over to the Cakes by Chopper Facebook page, print off your Frankenstein template, cut him out, minus his ears, and use the one without a face to cut out your cake using your knife vertically so you get a nice straight edge. Once you've got them two cut out, you're going to level off one of those cakes to get a nice smooth flat surface. Into a piping bag I put a little bit of green down either side and some white buttercream just so I get a nice swirl in the filling. It just makes it prettier when you cut it. So pipe on the filling, and I've made this quite thick because I want a generous helping of buttercream in the middle, and then I just put a few little wiggly lines. As I said, it's just the aesthetic of when you cut the cake. Once you've placed that on top and get your cake ready for a crumb coat, just slap this on. It doesn't really need to be that neat because you are going to go over this with fondant completely. I've just went around and make sure the cake was sealed and then popped it into the freezer for about 5 minutes so it sets it, and then I can put the top layer of buttercream on. Now, cutting out the brow of the top of his head, you're going to mark out where that lays on your cake, and then cutting out underneath his lip so you get a good idea of where his lip will be. You're going to pipe on some more buttercream and then taper that down from the brow going down towards the back of his head, because you really want to put that brow forward. And then with the lip, do the same thing and add a little dollop for his nose. This buttercream's quite soft still on top because we're going to mold that with our fingers. Clean up your cake board so you don't get buttercream in your fondant, and roll out a nice green shade of fondant. Then once you've got it to the desired thickness, lay that over the top of your cake, starting from one side and going to the other, making sure you don't miss any of the side pieces. Now, using my fingers, I've pushed in where the brow is, around the nose and the lip. I also did a little bit on the chin. Smooth it down all the way around, and then use a sculpting tool to make his mouth a little bit more pronounced and give him a nice flat line ready for his eyes to sit against his brow. Next, you're going to cut away the excess, and then you can ball this up and add a little bit of cornstarch to the bottom and go around the edge, smoothing away the fondant. This helps because if you use a flat fondant smoother, it's going to like bend your corners and everything, whereas the fondant against itself gives you a nice smooth edge, and you can form it to any shape you want. Next, you're going to use your face template to cut out the eyes and shape them with your fingers, keeping these the way that they're shaped on the thing because it gives him that sort of sad, dopey, happy look. And then you're going to place them on, and you can glue them down with a little bit of water. To give the cake a little more depth, I've used a green petal dust and gone through and just giving him a little bit of darker shadowing underneath his lip, his chin, the little crease above his chin, in and around the eyes, and some eye bags as well. Then you're going to roll out a thin black snake using your fondant smoother. This helps get a really nice thin line that you can't achieve with your fingertips. You can see I guessed the size, and I started at one side and then just trimmed it off at the other. Then you're going to make two smaller ones for the little creases at the top of his smile. I also thought that he needed one just above his chin because we are going for a really cartoony look. Roll out two small circles of black for his eye. Make sure you measure them against the template. Apply them with some water, and then as you can see here at the top, I've just trimmed it off to give that really defined brow so it looks like it's coming over the top of his eyes. Roll another little small piece of black for under his nose, and then you can start working on his hair, which I rolled out a big amount of black, cutting out the template with the scissors and then placing that on the bottom half. And as you can see, I went through one way and then cut the other way to get the little jagged look and clean that up with a sculpting tool. Now you're going to flip that around, moisten up your cake with a paper towel. I find this gives a good coverage, and then place the hair on where it should be and let it fall down the sides. Make sure that you've measured that this fits from left to right, all up the side and across the top. Cut off the excess, and then you can move on to making his bolts, where I rolled a big snake and then cut off two little nubs and placed two little flat snakes across the top to give it that bolty sort of look. And then I rolled out that snake even thinner to do a border. Now I've removed the bolts, as you can see, so I do the border first and then I cut out two little pieces for where the bolts go. But first I want to place on his ears, where I just got 2 large balls and sort of flattened them out into teardrop shapes and put the little crease of his ear in, because it's that real cartoony looking ear. Now it's time to trim off the border and place the bolts in. And I know the bolts look really weird right now, but once you've got them glued in and you place on the little bits at the side, once you're happy with the look of his bolts, you can paint them silver. This is an edible silver food paint, and then you've got your bolts attached. I've went through and made the bridge of his nose a little bit darker and across the brow, and then gave him some defined bags under his eyes. Now I've run him over with the cake steamer to give it that glossy look, and there you go. There is the Halloween Frankenstein cake. If you love the Halloween cakes, why not check out my pumpkin spice kitty cake, my Chucky cake, or the grave robber cake. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and thanks for sticking by me. It really means a lot. If you want to like this video and share it with friends, and maybe send me some photos if you make it for Halloween. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you later.